What time is it, my creatives? That's right, it's photo hacking time. And today it's Charlotte Salcedo, your host. And today we are going to be working in the brush panel settings. We're going to be learning how to create new brushes. Now, I know that we had missed an episode, and that is because my computer crashed and I had to reset everything back to factory settings. So if you see my screen is looking kind of weird, it's because I have gone back to the basics just like you guys. And the only thing that I have here is the banana toolbar, which we discussed in the last episode on how to set up your Photoshop like this. Now, if you don't have the banana toolbar and you didn't watch that episode, what you can do is you can add any of these tools by going here, edit, and then going to the toolbar, and then just add these toolbars as so, and then save the preset. And then you can also load that preset into your toolbars here. And it's just basically dragging it over. Okay, so that is that. So to get your screen looking like mine, what you're gonna do is you're gonna go to File, New, or you can go to Home and Create New. And what we have created is a 7x7 300 resolution document. And I don't want to work in something, you know, too big, because I want you guys to be able to see the screen. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new layer, and this is going to be our brush layer. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a curly afro brush, because I have curly afro hair. And I just thought it would be kind of cool to make a curly haired brush, because there's not a lot of them on the market. There's a lot for straight hair, but not really curly hair. So I thought that that would be very interesting. And so what we're going to do is we're going to be going into the brush settings here, and we're going to be learning how to create a curly haired brush, as you can see here. So it's fairly simple. It's not very hard to do. And I do want to mention that for this tutorial, I'm using a Wacom tablet with a Wacom art pen. You can use any pen that you want, any pen and tablet, but I do recommend using Wacom products. They are what the professionals use, and if you want to be a professional in this industry, you want to use the best products, and this is the only thing that I recommend. I don't recommend any other brand other than Wacom. So I have a video of that, of the Wacom paper edition, the review that I did, and I will link that in the description below, as well as the financing that you can get for that. You don't even have to have good credit. They will finance you a Wacom tablet in payments. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So the first things first is we're going to create a brush, and it's very simple. You're going to click on the brush icon here, okay? And I left the tooltips up here to help you out, you guys. So just click that brush icon and then go up here. And I'm just using the basic brushes, and if you want to find those basic brushes, we did go over this in a video, but I'm just going to give you guys a refresher. You go to here, and you can use legacy brushes or converted legacy tool presets. I'm using just the basic legacy brushes. I'm in the general tab here. Okay, in the general tab I have the hard round, and I'm going to set the size to about 3 and the hardness to about 86, and that is all. And I guess it's not going down. I don't know, for some reason my number lock is not working. I gotta fix that. Maybe it's working now. Let's see. Okay, it's because my dumbass didn't have the number lock thing turned on. So if your side keyboard buttons aren't working, you gotta press the number lock. Also, fun tip, you see how I have a little brush circle here? If your little brush circle isn't there, turn your caps lock off. Okay? I don't know how many years it took me to figure that one out, but that's a little secret to you. If your brush tip is missing, press the caps lock. It'll come back. All right, so without further ado, so now we have our brush settings, and you want to pull up your brush settings menu by going to Window and then Brush Settings. And so this dialog is here along with the brush. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this brush, and it went back up to 20 pixels, so I'm gonna change this to 3. So we should have a little teeny brush. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna come in here, I'm gonna zoom in, I'm gonna click on this magnifying glass, and I'm gonna just zoom in twice. And then I'm gonna go back and select the brush, okay? And then I'm just gonna, I got my Wacom pen in my hand, and I'm just gonna barely touch and make a half circle, and I kind of messed up there. So if you mess up, just press Ctrl Z. And then just try to make a little half circle. It looks like a little curl. You know what I'm saying? Like a little teeny curl. And that is what we're trying to achieve. Now the beauty of brushes is, see how we have a white background here? You don't have to turn that off. Let me tell you a secret about brushes. When you're making brushes, anything that's black is the only thing that's going to get picked up by the brush panel settings. It does not pick up white. So if you have a white background, if you have anything that's black on white, you can make brushes all day. Let me show you what I mean. So if you go to Edit and then Define Brush Preset, you're gonna see what is going in this little dialog box here. This is the only thing that is gonna show up. So everything that's black turns white in the brush settings, and everything that's white doesn't get picked up. Isn't that weird? It's so weird. I know. It's confusing, but just know, just all you have to remember is that it needs to be black in order for it to get picked up in the brush panel settings. If you want to create a brush, it's got to be black. Okay? All brush creation is made with a black and white item. So it doesn't need to be white, because remember, anything that's white is not going to get picked up by the brush creator, is what I like to call it. So we're just going to name this curl, and that's it. And then we're done. So now we have our curl brush, and I'm going to press Ctrl D. And then I'm going to just delete this layer, and then I'm going to press the plus button to create a new layer. Now, we're in our brush settings, okay? We're going to go up to brush tip shape. And I'm going to just basically break down this panel for you. Okay, so you can change the size of the brush, and you can lower the size of the brush. But here's the thing that you need to know. If you increase the size really, really large of this brush, and it wasn't created very large, it's going to look pixelated. So if you want to create a very large brush, you want to start out by making a large circle in the beginning, because you can't upscale the brush once it's smaller. But for this particular thing that we're trying to do, we want a tiny curl, so that's why we made our brush tiny. So in not all instances do you need larger than life brushes. In some instances, a smaller brush is key. All right, especially when you're doing detail. So we have this tiny curl brush. So in order to make this brush dynamic instead of static, first we're going to want to separate it. So we're going to just spread out the spacing here, and as you can see, our curl is starting to look more like a brush, but not really. So the second thing that we can do is that we can change the angle here. You can see that I'm just turning this thing around, and you can turn it all the way around. And the cool thing about this is that you see the little white things on the end. You can even drag them closer. You can change the angle, all kinds of stuff. And if you pinch it, you can pinch it closed like that. You can do all kinds of things with this. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to change the angle about because you want it to look like a curl. So it's about 16% there, okay? And our size is about 19 at this point. All right, so now we're gonna go over to Shape Dynamics. Brush projection. You're gonna want to enable that. And so what brush projection does is that it will change the angle of your brush without you having to go back in here and constantly move it on its own. You understand what I'm saying? So a lot of times that if you want to change the angle of your brush, you have to come in here and change the angle of your brush manually. But with the Shape Dynamics, the brush turned on and then turning on the angle jitter to pin tilt, you don't have to do that. It's going to automatically, when you start drawing, change the angle from whichever direction you are going. And what I'm going to do is I am actually going to create another video with something better to demonstrate that, because with the curl it really doesn't demonstrate that. Maybe I'll do it with like a fence or something where you can actually see the projection in real life. All right, so I got my brush here, and one second, let me turn off notification. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so you can change the angle jitter by moving it up, and so it's going to change the angle of your brush anytime that you are painting. So as you can see, it's looking more like curly hair. So I'm just pressing Control Z to get rid of that. You can also change the roundness of this by clicking the pen tilt, and you can also do it by pen pressure. You can change all these settings, and as you can see, it's looking more curly here. We're getting even more of a curl, and I'm just selecting this all and pressing delete. All right, so back with my brush in hand, and then you can change the size also to pen tilt, and so you could get a variation of sizes and curls. So that's really cool. And you can make hair from this that looks realistic in seconds, versus just having to sit there and draw one by one the hair. You can do projects really fast by creating brushes. So I'm going back to the brush, and I'm just selecting it and then deleting it, and that's all I'm doing, so you guys can see this. So you can change all of these settings in here to what you want. The pen pressure is actually, the pen pressure will actually, if you wanted to press lightly, it will have less of a size jitter, okay? And if you press hard, it will make the brush bigger. So that is what pen pressure is. So if you're making your own brushes and you want something to appear larger and smaller, and that way you don't have to, like, you know, constantly, like, what do you call it? Make your brush bigger and smaller, you can just use the pen pressure for this. So, but I don't really think that we need that. And then you can also use the flip X jitter, which will flip the brushes, you know, an X and then Y, okay? And this will actually explain this to you, the X-axis and the Y-axis. If you hover over it, it will usually give you a tooltip, you know, try to give you a hint on what it is. So you can play with these settings and see what you come up with. And so right now I'm liking my little curly brush kind of like the way it is. But I also kind of like the, I don't know, Control A, Control Delete. I kind of like the size jitter a little bit better all the way up. So the scattering is really fun because this is what will give your brush kind of like more, the best way that I can explain it is that, like, say for instance, you have, I don't know, a bowl of marbles and you emptied out all of the marbles. Now all of a sudden they're scattered everywhere. I guess that's a bad explanation and a bad analogy. Let's say confetti. Confetti is scattered everywhere. So that is basically what scatter is. It's going to scatter your brush everywhere. It's going to give it more scatter. I use scatter mostly in glitter brushes. So, and then you can choose for both axes, and on both axes, it's going to scatter them a little bit tighter together. And so as you can see, we're getting those little tight curls and they're looking a little bit more realistic. So I really like that. Whoopsies. I'm gonna just press Control A and then I'm gonna delete that. And we just have to keep doing this because we're experimenting. And you can up the count to make it more curly, as you can see. And with the curls, some of the curls are out with the strays. And although you may not like that, but curly hair does have a lot of stray hair going on. I have so many hairs coming out of everywhere, so I would say that it is accurate. I mean, I don't know. I like the way it is so far. So I'm thinking that it's good, but I don't like the spaces in between some of the brush, so I'm going to go back into the spacing and kind of like tighten it up so we have a better curly brush. All right, so with scattering, you can change the jitter. And what the jitter does is that it's randomizing those little stray curly hairs. So when you're brushing now, it's kind of randomized a little bit better. I don't know if you guys can see that. Let me zoom in. I guess that's too far. But as you can see, it's a little bit more randomized and it's looking a little bit more realistic. All right, so this one you can add texture to. I don't have any texture right now, but what you can do is you can go in here and you can import patterns. You can import Photoshop patterns, and you could probably add a hair texture. This is where if you're creating hair, you would add a hair texture to the brush to make it more realistic. And then you can invert that to, I don't know, kind of give it some depth. But we're not really adding texture here because I don't have any pre-made textures at this moment for hair. But there's some cool settings in here. And then you can also change it to texture each tip. You can turn that off. You can also change the blend modes, which is really cool. And these actually, so this is mostly I use for my watercolor brushes. I use all of these settings in here, but I don't think I would use them for hair. Probably for skin, but not for hair because I don't know. But the next thing that I want to show you, probably we could use for hair. So this is a dual brush. So with the dual brush, you can use two brushes together to create something really funky. And that is looking really funky. And you can just click on all of these other default brushes and see what you come up with. Now this one is a little bit more afro-y than the curly brush that I had. And I guess you could make beards with this or sideburns, I don't know. And you can just come up with a lot of funky, just different effects. You know what I mean? And a lot of times I'll spend days in here like playing with the brushes, and I really like that effect. That's pretty cool. You can also change the settings in here. So you can change the scatter, you can change the spacing, and you can even change the size to give it a little variation. So I'm going to turn that off, and I'm going to press Control A and Control Delete. So now we're into color dynamics. So this is the fun part. So let's say, what if you wanted to have two-tone colored hair that you wanted to create a curly brush from? Well, I have red hair, so I'm gonna make a two-tone brush from hair. And I would say that that red hair is really red. It has some kind of like orangey in it. And I don't know. I'm just gonna choose orange and a light brown. I know that's not the real color of my hair, but you know, we're just doing, you know, like a demonstration of what it is. It ain't gotta be like superimposed or anything like that. So right off the bat, you can change it to pin tilt, pin pressure, dial, fade, whatever. I'm gonna see how it will look with the pin tilt. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put everything into the middle here and see what we come up with now. And apply per tip. And let's see. You can change the settings here. And I forgot how to do the two-tone. My brain is racked. Okay, so that is too much. Okay, so if you just put these in the middle, the saturation, the brightness, the purity, and then the foreground and the background jitter has got to be turned all the way up, and the hue jitter is got to be about 5%, and it's going to take those two colors together, and it's going to make a really cool hairy brush. Look at that. Isn't that cool? It's going to mix those together, and this one is based on pin tilt. So what if you choose rotation? It's going to, when you rotate, it's going to mix the colors together a little bit more. And what if you use pen pressure? Okay, so if I barely tap, it's not going to mix the colors as well, but if I press really, really hard, I'm getting more variation with my colors, as you can see with my and then if I press lighter, it's not mixing the colors as deep. So with the pen pressure, you can, you know, change anything. You can change the saturation to make the colors brighter. You can turn the brightness down, which is going to give your hair a more muted tone. It's going to leave out the darker colors, but if you turn up the brightness jitter, it's going to make your colors darker, as you can see. So I would seriously suggest that you guys play with these settings. They're so much fun. Oh my god, they're so much fun. And then the transfer button. The transfer button is more of a transparency effect, so you would probably use that more with watercolor. And then brush pose, this is more to do with like rotation and tilt here, and just different settings. These are settings that you would use with, like, if you were making a brush that I would say more like more like a typography brush that you would use these settings for, because they're mainly for using the pen. So if you're not making brushes that are using the pen, you wouldn't need that at all. Noise, it will just give your brush a little bit more texture and noise, so that's kind of cool. I'm gonna change the brush back to black just so he can see it better. And so as you can see in here, like if you're creating like a chalky brush, let me zoom in here. If you're, well, I guess it's too far. I probably should have made the brush a little bit bigger so when I zoom in it doesn't look so pixelated. But yeah, because we're already at 100%. I probably should have made my document bigger is what I'm saying, so I could zoom in and you guys could see the details, because I know it's hard to see this on video. Alright, so I'm going back to the brush settings, and let's see here. If you don't have your brush selected, this will be grayed out and you won't have access to this panel. So you would have to go back and select the brush. And then wet edges is more for watercolor brushes, so you wouldn't really use this effect. And then build up is basically like when you're brushing, it will build on top. So it's more for layering, if anything. So as you can see now, my brush doesn't look like a hairbrush anymore. It kind of looks like a drawing brush or something that I would make textures with. You know what I mean? It's looking less like a hairbrush and more like just like a random brush. All right, so the smoothing, this smooths out the brush, and then protect the texture. If you have texture, you want to protect the texture. And so that's basically it. So now I'm going in here and I am making curly hair. So it looks really cool. So I'm just painting the hair. And so now you want to put your little dark hairs out here. And I'm just making a random face. I don't know, it's like some dude. And then if you go back into the brush settings, you can take the spacing out to get more looser curls. Shape dynamics. Gonna turn down the size jitter, the roundness jitter, all this stuff, so I can get some more like flyaways. I don't know, until it doesn't look like all together. And there you go. Now this looks kind of flat, so what you would do is that you would all hair has more colors in it than just one, so you would just go down a shade and then create a new layer, and then just take the opacity down probably like about 40%. Well, I think that's a little bit too down. Let's see what the fullest setting looks like. Okay, it's not light enough, so I'm gonna have to go in here and change the color to a lighter color and see what it looks like painted over, and just kind of get some dimensions in here to paint over the hair. Colors, the colors in the hair can be several, and then you can change the blend modes to give it more of a dimension. And then you can also change the color too. I'm gonna go in here and pick a really light brown, and then whoopsies, I've got to change the opacity here. I'm gonna change the opacity and the fill in here and just paint over the hair. And then you can add a blend mode as well on this to kind of give the hair a little bit more of a realistic effect. Now, I know this is kind of sloppy. It's not the best ever. And then, of course, you can go back in here, get a soft round brush, and then change the spacing here. You can add some noise. You can make some skin. You can, all the things that we've learned already. Let's go into, not brush pose, pen pressure, opacity jitter, minimum pen pressure, flow jitter, and then go to brush tip shape. Kind of like make a, I'm gonna create a new layer, and we have kind of like a skin brush. I don't know. I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger, And I know this is not exactly the color of skin, but this is just a tutorial, guys. We're not like doing anything fancy here. But that's how you make a skin brush. Very simple, very quick. I'm putting this underneath. And the reason why it has that line in there is because I did a blend mode and I just drew over it. So you can find the layer that has that line in it and then turn it off. So I probably accidentally drew here. You can either erase it off or turn it off. But you can make all kinds of cool little characters. I mean, you don't have to have traditional mediums to do art and Photoshop. This is so much fun. And then you can combine these hairs together by shift clicking. Okay, you can merge those layers together, and then you can do a color overlay. So if you didn't particularly like that color, you can do a color overlay over the hair. And let's say for instance we wanted to make this character like Total Annie. And to see that, oh my god. Oh, we really made an Annie over here. You can see here on the multiply, it brings out the brown highlights and it looks more realistic for the hair. So you can play with these blend settings, or you can just leave the hair orange Annie or red Annie or Afro orange Annie. I got some Bob Ross shit going on over here. That's so funny. Oh my god, Wendy's hair. Oh my gosh. You guys are probably gonna roast me for this. I like that one. That looks pretty realistic. You know, the subtract. Ooh, blue hair. I'm blue, I'm in need of a guy, I'm in need. Oh, gray hair, old people hair. Boomer hair, yay. But anyways, that is how you make brushes, and that's how you work with the brush settings. And the next video, we're gonna make cloud brushes, and that's gonna be so much fun. But thank you guys so much for watching, and if you like this video, like and subscribe, and I hope that you enjoyed this and you had a good laugh. Until next time.